Hey, I'm Jeremy Skinner. We're sitting down with Adele Fornarino, one of the most professional and highest level athletes in Jiu-Jitsu currently, multiple time world champion both in IBJJF and ADCC, as well as the first and second Australian gold medalist for ADCC. Adele's making waves in the sport with what she's doing on and off the mat, and so we're sitting down to talk to her about both of these things. So, hey Adele, how you doing?
What's going on, Jeremy? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm super excited to actually talk to you about a bunch of these things because we've been in the training room together before. I think we maybe have only ever rolled like once ever, and it was a long, long time ago. Then I left Melbourne, and then your career has just skyrocketed. So I really wanted to talk to you about like just different aspects of that. But first of all, what sort of got you into jiu-jitsu, and what was sort of your background prior to jiu-jitsu, either like, academically, sports-wise, things like this?
100%. So sports wise, like I've always been like really passionate about sports. I've always been quite competitive. So I did a whole bunch of sports when I was young. I've done swimming, tennis, soccer, AFL, pretty much anything that at the time my brother did, I did, and my parents were very, very supportive. And when I wanted to experiment with other new sports, they were very much encouraging me to do that. So I was in a pretty privileged position where if I had a passion, I was able to chase that passion. Jiu-jitsu was actually the first sport that I pursued by myself. So nobody else in my family, not my brother, not my parents, no one that I knew of did jiu-jitsu. And the way that it actually originally came about was when I was about 9 or 10 years old, I made the strong decision of I wanted to be a police officer when I grew up. I wanted to be a cop. And I thought at the time that knowing a martial art was going to help me chase down all the bad guys and was going to help me be like the best police officer that I could possibly be. So I jumped on to, we had a desktop back in the day, and I just quickly jumped onto Google and looked up martial art near me. And a jiu-jitsu gym happened to come up, and I wasn't specifically looking for jiu-jitsu. If it was taekwondo, I probably would have done taekwondo. I like looked into Krav Maga, I looked into all these other martial arts, but it was a coincidence that jiu-jitsu was close to us at the time. And when I jumped on the mats, I had an amazing coach. His name is David Christopher, was my very first coach, who now is in Melbourne, and he owns a gym called the Academy.
Okay,
Beautiful
yeah.
gym. One of the most aesthetic looking gyms I think I've ever seen. But he was my very first coach, and he was just an incredible coach. He was very good at running kids' classes to keep to keep the kids having fun, but also learning the fundamental skills of jiu-jitsu. So there was really good technique, which I now, even to this day, I still use those fundamental principles in my rolling. But the classes were very engaging. There were games. There was like encouraging that competitive nature of the kids, and that's kind of what kept me with it.
Awesome. Actually, so that also answers a little bit as well. One of the other things I wanted to ask, which is, what does Adele For like? What's the sort of alternative path of Adele Fornarino if she didn't find jiu-jitsu? So would have been a cop there looking to try and make a difference in the world.
Yeah, I probably would have been a cop. If not a cop, then I probably would have done some kind of like manual labor, tradie style stuff because I really
Yeah.
like building things. And I've me and my partner, we've just recently bought a house and we're DIYing a whole bunch of shit in the house. Because you may have enough money to pay for a mortgage, but that doesn't mean you're enough money to paint the walls.
No, exactly. Actually, I was going to say that like that actually kind of works out really well because I did see that, yeah, you guys have got a house, which is super exciting.
Dude, I carried what was it, 500 meters worth of decking wood from the front yard to the backyard yesterday, and I can't feel my arms. I can't feel but yeah, I probably would have done I either would have been a police officer or I would have done some kind of manual labor. I can't sit
Okay.
on a computer typing away. I need to move.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So with that then, in such an extensive sporting background, did you find jiu-jitsu you were just naturally drawn towards competition, or was that something that you felt like you needed, like you got pushed into a little bit, or like what was that like for you?
Well, for me, I was always quite competitive, and as a kid, that was encouraged. Like my parents never frowned upon the idea of being competitive towards something, or never made it seem like it was a bad thing to want to be the best at something, which was very motivating, and it kind of allowed me to pursue pursue something to the best of my ability. So it wasn't about it's not that they pushed me to be the best, but they allowed me to want to be the best, I think is the best way
Yeah.
to put it.
That
So
seems like a really healthy way to approach it because you do see like a lot of parents where, they're pushing their kid, like they're trying to live through their kid and they're trying to really push them in like a really unhealthy way. So that's sorry, as you're
No, no,
saying.
no. I 100% agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a much healthier way of I think approaching sports in general. I was never pushed to do sports. I was always encouraged to, if I was pursuing something, to like make sure that I put effort into it. But my parents were never looking over my shoulder. My parents still probably wouldn't know the point system of IBJJF, and they've been to hundreds of competitions. So I'm playing guard, and my mum's in the sidelines being like, "Get on top." I'm like, "No, I'm good, mum. I'm good. I like playing guard."
Like you're 15 years in at this point and you're still playing guard and it's still
Yeah,
just like, oh, get on top.
still confused.
Did you find competition from previous sports all that? Did you find jiu-jitsu competition all that different from previous sports? Because I do feel like with jiu-jitsu, going and competing is a little bit more of like an event. Like people maybe only compete 4 times a year versus a lot of other sports. You're generally competing like every other weekend, or even every weekend for a whole season. Overall, did you find like jiu-jitsu competition all that different from any other sports?
I thought it was very different, especially because majority of the sports I actually originally came from. So soccer was the one I treated probably most seriously out of all of the other sports that I participated in. And soccer is a team sport, and it also runs every weekend. And there's an on season and there's an off season. So there's a couple of very different factors in there where if you're having a bad day but your team's having a good day, you can still win. Like you can still do quite well. You can still have a really good score margin. If you are injured or you can't participate, that's okay. Your team can still play and you can still progress up the ladder. You're motivated by the other group of people on the pitch. So if you're starting to slack, then people are literally next to you yelling at you to encourage you to push harder, all these things. So other people are reliant on you. And then obviously the big thing is that there's a clear off season. You do your matches, your games for a certain portion of the year, and then you have an off season where you get to relax and you get to chill out. And you're not doing any training or any games. Jiu-jitsu is very different. I found it much more stressful. I found it a little bit more like lonely is probably the word to put on it, where I was much more reliant on my personal approach to every individual match more than relying on anybody else. So I had to take accountability for my time on the mats. And that made me feel very anxious and made me feel very nervous. It's the same feeling that I would get if I was doing like a public speaking, where I felt like I was
Yeah.
performing in front of people and there was a lot of pressure on that. And that was something that I very much had to, over my competitive career, learn how to deal with. When I was a kid, it wasn't too bad because, like, when you're a kid, you don't have as much fear, and you just like I was doing flying arm bars and things that I could watch now, and I would probably like shudder out of fear of snapping my neck. Um, and then I got to a point in my career where the anxiety and the nerves from competing was a lot of pressure, and I really struggled with that. And then I proceeded to kind of push through and treat competing a little bit differently, and now I actually get a lot of enjoyment from competing.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack with that as well because like I actually never really thought about describing competing in jiu-jitsu as lonely. Like I think it can like I definitely agree it can be lonely, but I never thought about it as being like particularly lonely compared to other sports. But I think you're right. Like, did you find this might be a little bit of like a downer question, but is there a particular moment that you felt like was the most lonely, like in competition for you?
Yep, 100%. I can almost pinpoint it exactly. And that was when I did Gi Brown Belt Worlds. I wouldn't be able to tell you the year. It'd probably be like 2019, I think, just before COVID hit. So it was the last Gi World Championship that I did as a brown belt before COVID had hit. So I think it's 2019. And I just remember the feeling of not wanting to be competing. I did not want to be there. I wanted to be home. I felt guilty about the money that had been spent on the plane tickets. I felt guilty about the time and energy that was put into the camp, and if I didn't win, then that was going to be wasted. I just remember the feeling of winning my first match. I quite comfortably won my first match by an armbar, and the only feeling that I had after winning that match was disappointment at the idea of needing to do another match. I felt
Yeah.
like genuinely sad and stressed about the idea of needing to get back out there and do it again. And then when I did my second match, I just kind of quit, man. Like I just like made like one little grip mistake and I was like, fuck it, I don't want to do this and ended up just like she ended up passing, taking my back, bow and arrow choking me and before the choke was even on, I was tapping because I was just so stressed and I was so anxious and I just wanted to I honestly just wanted it to be over.
It's really interesting to hear you like describe yourself feeling that way competing because I feel that you come across as a very confident grappler now. Like, what was that like then from sort of then to wanting to get like getting back to competing in and sort of change or actually, sorry, I'm making some assumptions there. Do you feel that you're still like you're a confident grappler now because you do put out that sort of air when you compete, or do you feel like you still get quite anxious when you compete?
I definitely think I'm a more confident grappler now. Do I get anxious? Absolutely. I don't know a person on the planet that doesn't at least get a little bit anxious before they step out on the competition mats. I think that that's completely normal. But I most importantly, I am a happy grappler. I enjoy what I do.
Awesome.
I have a lot of fun going out there. I have a lot of fun on the training mats. I very quickly realized the importance of enjoyment in my training. So at the end of the day, I do jujitsu because I enjoy jujitsu. I do it for no other reason than the fact that I enjoy jujitsu. I don't feel personally like I'm in a position where if I quit jujitsu today and wanted to pursue another career, I truly believe in my ability as a person. I think I'm driven enough. I think I'm intelligent enough to pursue another career if that's what I wanted to do. So I don't feel stuck in jujitsu. I'm not doing jujitsu because I feel like it's all I have. I'm doing jujitsu because I enjoy jujitsu, and the day that I stop enjoying it is the day that I'll stop doing it. So, what became very important to me was finding the enjoyment. Like, why am I doing this? What do I enjoy about this journey? Like, how can I make it more beneficial for me and the people around me? And that became super important. If I wanted to be miserable, I would do a desk job, and I'd be earning a lot more money than I'm probably earning
I,
now.
I make that exact same joke all the time where I'm like, look, like jiu-jitsu doesn't pay enough to not enjoy it. Like to put this amount of effort into anything else, like and not enjoy it, like you can make way more money. Like you can just go and sell your soul doing something else. So like this is only worth doing if you actually enjoy it. Like
I'd be having a
yeah.
very different conversation if I was a tennis player and I was earning millions of dollars and I'd be like, oh, fuck it. I don't like it, but hey, somebody has to pay for my yacht. Because
No, exactly.
I'm doing this because I like it and I'll keep doing it as long as I enjoy it.
Then what was that process like going from, brown belt 2019 worlds to now and actually finding like more fulfillment and enjoyment in the sport? Did you I guess like COVID did would have forced it to a degree, is like forcing you to take a step back. Was it specifically COVID, or was there like other things that also went into that? And also as well, like I guess, what were you practically doing to actually try and sort of reevaluate this? Like, was that a lot of self-reflection, or was that like talking to other people? Did you speak to like a sports psychologist? What was that sort of process like for you?
It was a bit of everything. So COVID for me happened at a really important time. It forced me, like you were saying, it actually forced me to take a step back. But when COVID happened to me, well, when COVID happened to me, it obviously didn't happen to me, but when COVID happened, how it impacted my life was I actually had a lot of scary changes and then a lot of very exciting changes. Like through COVID was when I met my girlfriend, now fiance at the time, so that was a big change. I made the decision of moving to Perth. That was a big change. I was moving away from my family, so my family lives in Melbourne, so I was moving out of home for the first time, changing environments from the gym that I had grown up in and stayed in my entire life to now exploring another jiu-jitsu space and another coach and another training environment. And then in that new environment, talking to some new people that gave me just different perspectives on training and different perspectives on chasing goals and getting enjoyment, but also very much a lot of like self-reflecting and like looking inwards at why I was actually doing jiu-jitsu and trying to come back to the joy of experimenting with moves and inventing different things and being creative and like really just enjoying that process again.
Awesome. So with that, then getting back into competition, sorry, this is a little bit of a pivot then, just because it's making me think about like, okay, your trajectory through jiu-jitsu. Because since then, it seems like you've had a pretty strong focus on no-gi. Um, so I was curious to hear like you like making that pivot as well, and also as well like I feel up until the last couple of years, women's jiu-jitsu specifically was extremely gi focused compared to the men's jiu-jitsu. So I was just curious, like, to hear your thoughts on that, both like on like women's jiu-jitsu and how that's changed in terms of like the growth of no gi, as well as just your own focus on no gi jiu-jitsu.
So I think that mostly came from the fact of when I moved to Perth originally, I had the goal set of ADCC and ADCC trials because I
Yeah.
knew that that was coming up and that was towards the kind of when COVID was finishing. I knew the trials was gonna pop up and I wanted to give it a crack. And then off the back end of that, it became more opportunities came from the no-gi scene than the gi scene. And previously it was a little bit of the opposite when it came to the women, like you were talking about before. Um, but that was just because there was a lot of fight promotions doing no-gi events, but they just weren't putting on many female fighters. And then I think through ADCC and a couple of other competitions, they realized that there was depth of some of these divisions. There was depth of female athletes for the Nogi scene. So they started to bring them on to the shows a little bit more. And even nowadays, we only kind of get one, two, maybe three if we're lucky, women's fights on a given night. So there's still not a lot of room. Like I say room, like because it does feel like it's about like room on a card. It feels like they'll give us two, maybe one or two, and they'll be pushing it for three, and we have to kind of fight for those spots. But it didn't seem like we had as much opportunity until they realized that there was a lot of depth and a lot of talent there.
So on that specifically, then, do you feel with, say, the growth of women's jiu-jitsu, is that going to be more one of those things where creating more opportunities on the big stage first to then bring more women into the sport? Or do you think it'll bring more women in the sport will create more opportunities on that stage?
It becomes the game of when you invest in something, then it gets better. When it gets better, it gets more views. When it gets more views, it makes more money.
Yeah.
So it takes an initial investment to increase the potential of whatever that might be. So we can take WAFL as an example. Where
Yeah.
WAFL, so that's Australian rules football here in Australia, but it's the female league, it's the women's league. Um, what the AFL decided to do was invest in them, was pump a lot of money into it to increase the talent pool and increase how competitive it was to become a WAFL player. So more talent came in. So the level of the league increased. So when the level of the league increased, the matches got better. More people wanted to watch them because the matches got better. More viewership means more money, more sponsorship. So and that's how we grow these sports. It's the same with WNBA, which is huge at the moment. WNBA, I don't know if you track much women's basketball. When WNBA is on their off season, there's another event called Unrivals, and it's specifically for the women. It's 3v3, so there's three people on the court at any given time, and it's quite a high pace, very interesting style of basketball to watch. And I think I was hearing this morning that it brought in an excess from last year of $46 million, I think. So it's just kind of showing the growth that's going on there and
Yeah.
how if we put more time and energy and investment into these women and into these programs, in a few years' time, we can reap the rewards of it. But it takes that initial investment.
Yeah. Do you think with that then, sorry, I'm just like just sort of thinking out loud a little bit, like with how they would structure that for like a jiu-jitsu event, because you'll see different approaches to it where Polaris, for example, will do a predominantly women's, like a women's event, like say like a teams event, for example, and they might have say like some men's matches thrown in there versus do you think it would be better for them doing more events like that where it is like more focused on women's, like specifically versus my thought would be more so about like just normalizing, like having like just a mix of matches through all the cards.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. So the women's team event on Polaris was one of their most streamed events throughout the year. I'm pretty sure. Like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that was one of their most streamed events. So the viewership is clearly there. I think normalizing it to have a mixture of both is very good. But again, it's that initial investment. It's building the building the athletes, building the stories around the athletes, the attention, sometimes
Yeah.
the backstories. We need to get people interested in these people, in these athletes, so that they actually want to watch them. But that takes the the promotions trusting that that investment is going to pay off. And I think a lot of the fight promoters unfortunately come to the party of they're not sure that it's actually going to pay off. So it's safer for them not to make that initial investment, for them not to put time and energy into that, because the safer investment is to put it into the men, because like historically the men have brought more money and more viewership until there's another avenue that they can explore. So
Yeah.
it's kind of paradox that ends up happening.
Yeah, like because actually I getting away from sort of like women, but like I even see this just with like gi no-gi in jiu-jitsu gyms where there'll be like a predominantly gi gym, for example. They'll put on like no-gi classes and they go, "Oh, we put on no-gi classes and no one came, so we cancelled it." It's like, well, you got to put the time in and like let it build, let it build, let it build until it's there. Like make a habit of it, and then like the people will be there for it. But if you just like you throw it like you do it a little bit and you go, "Oh, it didn't really pay off," like you're sort of going to get back what you put into it.
Yeah. I think it takes effort, right? Everything takes effort.
Yeah.
I think the other thing to understand about that is it's like I say we, and when I say we, I'm kind of trying to talk for the female athletes, the women
I
athletes.
think I think you've earned the right to do that because I do think you are like a figurehead like for women's jiu-jitsu at the moment and really doing a good job of trying to push that. So I think you can speak for it.
I'm trying to advocate for the right things. I honestly am,
Yeah.
and I'm always one to, if somebody wants to correct me, I'll listen. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm always right about everything. But I think the thing to remember about all of this is just because we're asking for more doesn't mean that we want the men to get less. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important to understand. We want everybody to get more. We want everybody to improve. We want everybody to get the validation, the support that they deserve, but it's not about one wanting more and one wanting less. Just because a female athlete is becoming famous and they're getting followers on Instagram, that doesn't mean that male athletes should be losing followers on Instagram. That's kind of
Yeah.
how I want to see it.
Like it's not a zero-sum game.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, like there is room for both.
Yep.
Um, sorry, pivoting a little bit because I also wanted to then go back to sort of talking more specifically about you. And so where we sort of left off was you sort of choosing to focus on ADCC trials, and therefore after winning ADCC trials, like then your approach to ADCC. Now, was there because I kind of wanted to talk about as well, like the way that your training and development has changed over the course of doing the sport. Um, Now, was going into trials simply just a matter of a change in focus for you with competition? Because you talked about like the idea of like wanting to like, get back more into like enjoying the sport and things like that. Was there any sort of major changes to the way that you approach the sport in general outside of that leading up to trials? Or is it just like simply like, okay, I'm just going to change my focus because I want to do this thing?
So the change in focus from from gi to nogi, was more so an environmental thing at the time, where there was a lot more professional environments for nogi training in Perth than there were gi. Having said that, there was a very big shift in mindset where I had always approached competition from the position of train really, really hard and make the camp as miserable as I possibly could, and then get out there and just kind of hopefully I've done enough to reap the rewards and then compete well. Sometimes that would work, sometimes it wouldn't. There wasn't a lot of strategic focus. There wasn't a lot of like game planning necessarily. It was just, is my jiu-jitsu better than the person in front of me? Maybe yes, maybe no. But that was the focus. There wasn't much more than that. It wasn't a very sophisticated approach to competition. And then 2022 was more or less the test run of I was working with a group of people. Specifically, I was working with Jake O'Driscoll at the time, who you would know quite well. You guys have fought before.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A lifetime ago, it feels like.
Motherfucker tried to slam you too. Yeah, he paid for that, but um Uh, so I started working with him and he kind of gave me a different perspective to training, which was approach it more professionally. So the time on the mats were very planned out. So a lot of positional focus, a lot of strategical breakdowns, a lot of making sure when we were getting on the mats, it wasn't just doing jujitsu, it was trying to fix very particular things in everybody's game. So it was not so much a shotgun approach as it was a very specialized approach of let's fix every individual thing. So then we can have this big holistic approach to jujitsu because all these little things have been fixed.
Yeah.
And that was really enjoyable for me because it was a puzzle, right? It was like we were fixing these puzzle pieces and we could have very like academic conversations about jujitsu. It wasn't just a matter of like, okay, get on the aero bike and cover and like tape your mouth and make it so that you feel like you're suffocating, and then get off the aero bike after 2 minutes and then get on the mats, and then we'll waterboard you with a gi while you're underneath the mount. And like, and by the way, literal things that I have done, by the way, not making this shit up, literal things that I have done. But it was just to get like used to the feeling of being miserable. Now, does that kind of training have a place in jiu-jitsu? Probably not to the waterboarding extent. Like, is feeling miserable and getting used to that feeling important? Yes. Should it be the central focus of your training? No. We're doing a technical sport, so the focus should be around that. We're doing a strategic sport, so the focus should be around that. So there was a very big shift towards that. And then in 2022, I had won ADCC trials, and I cannot remember a time that I was more excited to be competing. I very distinctly remember like I was nervous, but the excitement was kind of much more intense than the nerves, and that was pretty cool for me.
So then, so did much change in terms of the way that you're approaching the sport from trials to ADCC? Because I guess like not much could necessarily change in that time because our trials was actually quite close to when ADCC actually happened. But even then, like, was it like trials? I guess would have been also as well like a confirmation on you were doing certain things correct with like the adjustments you've made, as well as maybe like you looked at that and also went, okay, like overall, like trials went well, but we need to fix these things. And sort of what was that process like then going from trials towards ADCC?
Training was more or less the same in the sense of like we were fixing all the individual things and still being quite particular and professional. But the mistake that I made was I had reached the point of feeling content in the work that I had done at trials. So by the
Hmm.
time I had won trials in 2022, I was excited to just be a part of the event.
Yeah.
I had no true aspiration of actually winning that event. I had no true self-belief that I could win that event either. It was more like a, oh my God, I did the thing that I was trying to do and I'm excited and I'm content with that, and now I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to have fun at ADCC. And that's what I did. I went out and in 2022 I had fun, but I distinctly remember halfway through my match, I had that feeling of, wait on, fuck, I could actually win this. Like if I locked in, I could win this. And halfway through a match is not the time to make that decision of, hey, I actually kind of want to win this match. So obviously I lost the match, but it left me with the feeling of, why did I undervalue myself at this event? Why did I not trust my capacity to actually be able to win? Why did I put these people on a pedestal when I know for a fact that I have the capacity to outwork, out-train, out-technique, out-strategize these guys? Um, and that was the massive mind shift, like mindset difference between my first ADCC and my second one. So I had,
Yeah.
I think it was something along the lines of 460 days between 400 and, anyway, I can't remember the exact amount, but it was a certain amount of time between ADCC and then trials, and then from trials to ADCC again. And I remember thinking about ADCC like literally every single day between then and my next competition. And everything that I was doing was to try and prepare for ADCC, not trials. It was for ADCC. Like trials at
Yeah.
that point, trials for me was, oh, I'm obviously going to win trials because I'm going to outwork everybody. Like nobody's
Yeah.
going to be able to even keep up with me by the time trials hit. So I'm not even focused on trials. Like, yeah, it's important, but I'm gonna outwork everybody at ADCC. I'm gonna outwork all the girls there, and nobody's gonna be even close to me. That was the mentality that I had at that point. Um, but I had to sit down with my team, and so I had to sit down with Jake. I had to sit down with my manager. I had to sit down with some training partners, and the massive conversation that especially me and Jake had was around professionalism. And that was like that's a word that I would get tattooed on my body, professionalism, because I live by that. And
It's actually, funnily enough, one of the notes I have written down is like to talk to you about the fact that you're one of the few people I feel like in this sport who really does approach it in a truly professional capacity. I could like there are specific like gyms and people you can point to, but I feel like it's something that uniquely stands out for yourself. Yeah, just amongst like high level competitors, because there are a lot of high level competitors in this sport, but not many of them are professional. And I'd consider jiu-jitsu to be one of the most unprofessional professional sports.
100%, I agree. I think it's, again, it's about investment, right? I think that there is so much potential in the sport of jiu-jitsu. But at the moment, it's the Wild West. We have so many different rule sets. We have so many different promotions that hold on to so many different athletes. We have a very wide scale of a pay scale. We got a very wide scale of like fight time, all these things. Like, and it's a growing sport, and people are trying to figure out the best way to invest in the sport. But as an athlete, that's professionalism. How do I elevate my ability? How do I elevate my presence in this sport? And that's behave like a professional. And to do that, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to change everything. All you need to do is look at what million-dollar athletes are doing. What is Novak Djokovic doing? What is LeBron James doing? What is Serena Sabalenka, Serena Williams, Caitlin Clark, all these million-dollar athletes? What are they doing? How, with the budget that we have, can we recreate what they're doing? And then how can we make sure that by the time we step out there, we're ready to compete in our given sport? So Djokovic is kind of one that we focused on a lot because I really like his mentality towards competing. I do think that there are actually surprisingly some similarities between tennis and jiu-jitsu. Um, it's a single person sport. It's a very strategic game. There's a lot of mind games playing into it. One decision, one loss of a set can impact the rest of the game. Um, but there are some similarities there that I really enjoy. That's why I really enjoy watching tennis. There's some statistic out there about I think it was I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe Federer. Um, but they were talking about how many titles they'd won, and they'd won a lot of titles, but then they go back and go, but how many individual points did I win? What was the percentage of points that I won in most of my games? And it was like
Mm,
just above 50. So even though they're winning all these
yeah.
titles, they're only just beating and winning more points than the person that's standing in front of them. And a lot of that is the mental game. It's winning the important points rather than just winning all of the points. It's really staying strong when you're on the back foot. It's things like that. Um, And that's so accurate in jiu-jitsu where it's like even when you're in a bad position, if you stay mentally resilient, you can still win that match.
I've seen a clip where Federer talks about a very similar thing, where he actually mentions that statistic and talks about the fact that the actual like if you look at the number of points scored, they're actually quite close between like the highest level competitors, and he talks about just the fact that you've got to just whatever happened previously, you've just got to forget about it and like play the next point. You've just got to forget. Because if you're sitting there thinking about, fuck, well, he scored this many points, I mean, it's like, yeah, but like that's the case. Like, but that doesn't affect what you're doing right now. But
Exactly.
I actually so it's really interesting as well that you're talking about like referencing tennis because one of the things I spoke to Greg Saunders previously and we looked at sort of the other side of things in terms of professional coaching and how that works. Comparing professional coaching in other sports like basketball to professional coaching jiu-jitsu. One of the things when I look at you as a professional athlete, and it's interesting because you referenced previously like the lonely feelings of jiu-jitsu. Because when I look at you as a professional athlete right now, I feel you put a lot of trust and faith in your coaches and the people around you. How do you navigate that as like a professional athlete? Gives you the strength to actually put the trust in these other people when it is like what is the Wild West?
I think that comes down to the fact, like, it comes down to a number of different things. It comes down to open communication between myself and my team. Like, I should be able to tell them how I feel about certain things, and they should be receptive of that. It comes down to trusting the process, and that trust is based off previous results, and the trust is also based off understanding that they're putting the same work in that I'm putting in. So when I'm getting ready for matches, I know that Jake has watched every single match of the opponent that I have to face. Back to when they were a yellow belt as a juvenile. Doesn't matter. Everything has been looked at, everything has been studied. I trust that they're doing that. And they trust that when they give me instructions, whether that be technical instructions on the mat or specific training that I'm supposed to be doing, they trust that I'm actually doing that. So the trust is built from open communication. The trust is built from um, like putting in equal work, and the trust is built off like actually getting the results.
So with that then, in terms of like your own development, because there is like sort of, like the athlete, the coach, and then somewhere in there is where we come up with like the jujitsu that we do. Um, what are you on your side of things then? What are you doing in terms of study and things like that for your own development?
Oh, it's funny. I'll do what I'm told. So that means like I'll have
Yeah.
conversations with Jake, and if he recommends that I should be watching particular matches, then I'll watch those matches. If there's something that I personally want to look at myself, I will do some study. I will watch through some matches. I won't deep dive as intensely as I trust that my team is doing. But I will look through matches just to see personally, like to get particular looks. I'll rewatch my training footage as well to look at my own rolling to see what adjustments I can personally make. Um, yeah, so I still do some of the things. It's just not necessarily to the deep extent that the people in my team are doing them. Because I'm doing the other things. I'm
Yeah.
doing the lifting and the training. So I as much as I can, I want to outsource the things that I don't necessarily need to be doing.
You had the recent match on Polaris, and actually one of the really noticeable things about that match was you focusing on a lot more stand up. One, like what was like what's the process like there for you, like then currently developing, say, for example, like your stand up, and then also like how do you incorporate that into your preparation for a match? Like, do you pick certain matches where you're going to take that match not necessarily because you want to especially win it, but because you want to go in and demonstrate and practice certain skills? Like, is this something that you do? Because it seemed like for that match, you went in there specifically wanting to get a few takedowns on the board and then move in towards like winning the match. Would you say that's fair to say, or am I sort of,
You're spot on. Like it's I definitely want to be active. Like I think being active, competing is a practice skill. So getting out there and practicing that is very important. And like I pride myself on wanting to have a well-rounded like holistic style of jiu-jitsu. I don't want to be single dimensional. I don't want to be just a guard player. I want to make sure if the match goes to standing, I have the capacity to do that. But having the capacity to do that on the mats versus the capacity to do that on the competition mats, two very different things. So it's important that I take matches and I try and I test out other skills to, let's say, battle test it. So that when there's pressure, there are lights, there are cameras, that I'm still able to do all the jiu-jitsu that I know how to do and not just need to narrow my focus in one style of jiu-jitsu.
yeah. No, that makes sense. Is that one of those things where you're doing that more for yourself, like more for like the love of the sport, or is that because you think that like long term that is going to be a better approach for you to take with being well-rounded?
I think being well-rounded in general is important because it doesn't matter what happens in a match, you have all the answers. So, for instance, I had a match with Maisa, and that was the first match at ADCC 2024. And what happened in that match was we were playing guard. There were some leg lock exchanges. I was getting the better of those leg lock exchanges. So she came up on top. She looked to try and pass a little bit, couldn't pass. So then at one point, I actually swept and came on top. Now, if you know anything about Maisa, you know how good her guard is. It's absolutely incredible. Like it's one of
Yeah.
these it's like I've studied it, I've watched it. I have so much respect for how technical her jiu-jitsu is. But when I swept, referees didn't put any points on the board. They apologized for it afterwards,
Yes, I
but
remember.
that wasn't going to change the outcome of the match. So I had 1.5 minutes left of this match where an exchange that should have scored me points didn't score me points. And then if she swept me back, I was going to lose. So I had to play top game.
Yeah.
So I had to not get swept, not
Yeah.
get submitted. I had to make sure that I was comfortable playing top. But not only that, okay, knowing that she's going to have a very difficult guard to pass, there's no points on the board. We're going to go to OT in a second. When we're going to OT, well, fuck, I got to know how to wrestle as well now. So if you were to strategize a match with Maisa, the strategy would be don't have 0 points on the board and look to be passing her because it's a near impossible Task.
Yes, like when she's got literally, yeah, exactly. She's got one of the best guards in the whole sport. It's not one of those things where you're like, cool, this is exactly where I want to be, is trying to pass my Aces guard.
Yeah. So we had to have the strategy mapped out of if I'm on top, how to play the top game with her, and
Okay.
if we go to wrestling, how those wrestling exchanges should look. So even though it wasn't the ideal scenario, well, we had everything planned out anyway. So that's what I mean when I say we have everything covered. We have everything planned, even if they're not ideal situations, we're ready to go. So I ended up winning that match only because I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do from top from a passing exchange and from a wrestling exchange.
That match is actually, there's a couple of different things about that match that make that super interesting with what you're talking about there. Also, you mentioned preparing for the wrestling in overtime. What was that actually, what was the actual thought process for the wrestling overtime against Maisa when I don't think she's shown any wrestling in a previous match to that?
For
What was the mindset for that?
for that, it was actually again, we don't want to end up in situations where I'm top and she's bottom for prolonged
Yeah.
amounts of time because she has a very dangerous guard. So it was more so a strategy towards like bullying,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. So it was pushing her around, like making sure that we're very clearly the dominant one out of the two. And as well as in regulation time, I felt like I had a very dominant regulation time as well. I had some good submission attempts. So in the judges' eyes, we could understand that we should have comfortably been up. So it was to bully. And then towards the end, we could look for actual takedowns to consolidate that top position. It was shutting down any it was moving forward, pushing and shutting down any attempts very early. And then anytime there was a shot that actually engaged, and we actually stole this strategy off Baby Shark. Anytime there was a shot that engaged, if there was a turtle, it was to back away instantly. Because what we
Mm,
didn't
yeah.
want to have was a turtle exchange that then she could pull guard and then we're in the guard scenario. We didn't want her to get a free guard pull from
Yeah.
takedown. And that comes down to strategy and understanding your rule set. So if you watch, I can't remember exactly what match it was, but it was a match with Baby Shark, and every time the other person shot on Baby Shark, he would stand up instantly and he would go as far as throwing his hands back to show that there was zero engagement, so no guard pull could happen.
I can't remember the specific match, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was against Pato.
Wouldn't surprise me as well. I think it might, but we
Um,
stopped that strategy of him.
he's actually like I feel like he actually doesn't get studied enough with like yeah, like because he's actually incredible. Like, the amount of like under 66 grapplers that he passes is really impressive because you actually don't see a whole lot of people getting passed at that weight division. Like, but he's just so well rounded.
I think it's there's two different ways you can approach watching a match. You can watch it from a technical standpoint where you can actually watch the individual exchanges and what's going on. And then if you actually take a step back, you watch it from a strategic standpoint where think less about the individual exchanges and think more about in the overarching rhythm of that match, why those decisions are being made. So you look at it from like Mais is another very good example. She has a very clear cadence to her when you watch her matches. There's a very consistent rhythm that she has, and she follows that through most of her matches. So pick an athlete. Don't look at the individual technique. Look at it what they're doing strategically in those matches, and you'll have a different perspective.
Do you find like analyzing or the strategy that you take for a match versus the tactics is more important, or do you feel like it's one of those things where it's going to depend match by match?
Match by match for sure, because there are some people that are more difficult to strategize than others, because there are some people that go into matches and just do jujitsu, where there's not, you can't see a clear pattern and you can't see a clear game plan from them, from their side of things. So it's hard to game plan for somebody that doesn't come in with a game plan. But that's why, like, being a well-rounded athlete in the sense of having a good strategy, a good game plan, understanding your rule set, and then having good jujitsu and good cardio and good strength. Like having all of those things, well, that's going to make you unstoppable. But to have all of those things, you have to behave like a professional. You have to
Yeah.
behave like you're ticking boxes and you're doing all those things.
No, that makes sense because you can't really go in and approach these matches having tactics and strategies if you're not doing all the groundwork that's going to facilitate that to happen. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry, with that then, and going back to sort of Maisa to a degree, is there any matches like rematches that you actually want to have at this stage? Like I know that you're at the height of the sport at the moment, and so really people should be calling you out. So I kind of actually I kind of dislike this question and the fact that I'm asking it because really it should be people calling you out. But is there any matches in particular that like you're looking for, or even just like certain things like maybe not even specific people, but like certain types of matches that you're looking for at this stage?
But there's a lot of matches that I want. Like I'm honestly not scared of fighting anybody. There's heaps of matches that I want. I will fight in my weight class. I'll fight out of my weight class. I don't really care. Like I have a good time anyway. Is anybody I like okay, I enjoy matches with people like Maisa because they're technical matches. I enjoy unpacking those puzzles. There obviously if you like controversial matches that happened recently, I'd like to have those matches again, but is it going to be the make or break of my career? No. If people want to take the matches, cool. If they don't, well, that's on them. Yeah, I just want to be active, man. I honestly just want to keep testing myself and be active. I realized a statistic the other day, which was I'm ranked in the top five of four different weight categories, as well as being ranked with like top five in the pound for pound as well. And there's no male or female that has that statistic.
Yeah.
So I'll fight whoever. I don't care. I just
So Adele Fornarino, prove it. Like a lot of people say they just want to throw down, but like actually prove, like actually being able to demonstrate that is another thing entirely. Like being in
fought
five
once in
different weight
my weight
classes.
class. I fought
Yeah.
once in my weight class in the past maybe 2 years. I've only fought like once realistically.
No, I think that's sick. That's awesome. So, but I want to move in towards soon, stuff off the mat. But like, one final thing, just sort of on like actual competition, jiu-jitsu, things like this. Do you have any other specific goals for competition at the moment? Because I feel like you've really achieved quite a lot in Nogi. Like we're talking not just ADCC gold and absolute gold. It's like first Australian to do it, second Australian to be able to do it, like Nogi World Champion, black belt. Like, is there any other like goals for competition that you have? Like, are you considering it all making like a pivot back to gi, for example, just to simply be ticking boxes?
Yeah, always. There's always more to be done, and I think that that's what I learned. I learned the hard way is never to be content. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. Um, Everything, man. Like it's the list is endless. Like more ADCC titles, more historical moments. Like why not? Why just be the first and second? Why not be the third as well? Why not be the fourth?
The
Um,
10th, yeah,
and,
like build that legacy.
yeah, building the legacy in every platform. I think that, especially at the moment, my focus was very competition driven, and it still is, and I still absolutely want to win everything on the competition scene. Yes, I definitely want to go back to the gi, and I want to have a crack at doing gi worlds and things like that. But the more especially with what's going on at the moment, the more I'm in the sport, the more I'm understanding that I want to build my legacy on and off the mats. And
Yeah.
part of that is really advocating for women as athletes and as participants in the sport as well.
Yeah, so because this is one of those things where it's kind of I wouldn't even say it's like an unspoken or like a sort of like open secret or actually I would probably say it's like an open secret, but it's one of those things where people did actually talk about it, but hasn't really gotten that much attention through the sport, which is going to be just I'd say predators exploiting the sport.
Yeah,
And so you spoke about that. You've spoken about that, a number of times recently, is that the fact that the sport needs to change. I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to that.
100%. I think that it is unfortunately right now quite a damaged sport. I think culturally there are some massive problems where the sport of jiu-jitsu is built on trust. The entire underground, like the entire foundations of this sport is built on trust. I trust that when I tap, you're going to let go and you're not going to break me, you're not going to hurt me, you're going to let me go, and everything is going to be safe. I trust that when we roll, you have nothing but good intentions and nothing but my safety in mind, especially when we're on the training mats. We're on the competition mats. Okay, safety is a little bit less of a thing, but it's still the trust of when I tap and the referee is saying stop, that you're going to let go and you're not going to actually kill me. And that is, I think, what's so upsetting about what's going on at the moment is people exploiting that deep level of trust amongst environments of the most vulnerable types of people. People are coming in for all different types of reasons to this sport, especially when it comes to women. A lot of women are coming in to learn how to protect themselves. They're learning how to be safe, and a lot of these women do have stories off the mats of what has motivated them to come into these environments to learn how to protect themselves. And they're stepping into these environments where these people are exploiting that vulnerability and that trust that they're trying to find. And on top of that, we're creating an environment that has a zero accountability structure.
Yeah.
People put these coaches and these black belts on pedestals where it becomes a situation of it doesn't matter what they do, there's too much blind loyalty to actually hold people accountable for their actions. And just because somebody is particularly good at a very niche skill, jiu-jitsu is very niche, let's be very clear about that. Like our biggest events in the world have 100,000 views. Like you could put marble racing on YouTube and that's got like 3 million views on it. Like we're a very niche sport, let's be clear. But somebody is very good at this particular niche skill, and because they're good at this, oh, they couldn't possibly be doing anything negative over here. They couldn't possibly be exploiting or taking advantage of or, being predators towards a certain group of people. They couldn't possibly do that. And that disconnect is what's causing these problems where nobody wants to speak out, nobody wants to hold anybody accountable, everybody wants to sweep it under the rug, and there is no structure built into gyms where victims, survivors can actually sought after recourse of what's happened to them.
There's a movie. There's a jiu-jitsu black belt, a guy called Riley Stearns. He made a movie called The Art of Self-Defense. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, but it's a karate movie. But it's a really a movie about jiu-jitsu where it's about essentially it's about losers inserting themselves into the small hierarchies and then exploiting the small hierarchies to try and have their way over people. Feels like a particular problem in jiu-jitsu. Do you think that's the case?
I think the sad truth of it is no. I think that the jiu-jitsu is a representation of the wider world. I think that we're just our own little ecosystem of what's actually going on in the wider world because we've seen people exploit athletes in other sports before. We've seen it countless times. We've seen, I think, US gymnastics, there was a massive case, over 20 victims, I believe. So it's not like this is the first time we've seen it. Is it very prevalent in our sport? Yes, because of the close proximity nature, because of the hierarchical structure that exists in our sport, because we literally have a belt system that shows people where they sit on this hierarchical structure. And
Yeah.
that is obviously anytime you introduce those kind of things to an environment of people, it gives the ability for people to take advantage, especially if there's no external person holding anybody accountable. We don't have a HR department. Jiu-Jitsu doesn't
Yeah.
yet have HR. We have no avenues of recourse. The HR department is the black belt, is the person who owns the gym, right? So do I think that it's a just jiu-jitsu problem? No. Do I think that it is particularly prevalent in jiu-jitsu? Yes, I do.
What are some like actual practical sort of ways that we can approach changing things in the sport? Because one of the issues, and I feel this, I feel I see this get brought up with the issue of predators in general, where a matter of education, making people understand what things like consent look like, it does have an impact, but there are still just going to be people who are um, completely aware of boundaries, completely aware of the lack of consent from another person, and they're still gonna, still look to victimize people. So there's only so much that we can change about these bad actors. What do you think it looks like in the sport to actually change other things around it, to set up safeguards, reduce the reach of these people, things like this?
So I ideally it would be a forced upon thing to actually have an external HR department of these gyms. There would be some kind of governing body. It's hard, like that is a difficult thing to organize because again,
Yeah,
like earlier on, jiu-jitsu is the Wild West, right?
yeah,
You could order a black belt off Amazon and nobody would be the wiser. I think that the something that's going to help in the short term is going to be an accountability structure, and that only comes from a cultural change within the sport. It needs to come from the people that do the sport, and it needs to come now. Everybody needs to work together to be making sure that they're changing the environment to not allow behavior that slowly creeps into people actually having the opportunity to take advantage of people or um being able to justify it on a misunderstood joke or whatever that's going to be. So it needs to the culture needs to change in these environments and people need to actively work on changing that. So if you see something, you say something, you hold people accountable, and it shouldn't matter what belt they have. It shouldn't matter like if they're the owner of the gym or not. You should be able to tell this person if they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Because the victims can and often do speak out, but they get excommunicated from their gym, they get blacklisted from the jiu-jitsu community, and there are going to be friends of this person that know that that's not right, but they are too scared personally to speak out, and that's what's causing the problem. And I spoke about this at Polaris. It's the innocent bystander approach of, well, it didn't happen to me, and I didn't do anything, so it's not my problem to deal with. I think that that's a very weak, and that's quite like, for lack of a better term, I think it's a pathetic way to approach the whole situation. I think that more people need to hold these people accountable. Um, there was, I going on a tangent about this. There's something that popped up on my Instagram the other day, and that was the classic situation of, there's 10 people in a room and one guy makes a super like nasty or inappropriate joke or sexualized joke, and three people in the room genuinely laugh. Another three people, because they don't want to feel left out, they also laugh, but they don't think that the joke is funny. And then the last three people just don't say anything and they don't laugh. And nine out of those 10 people can walk away being like, I'm not part of the problem because I didn't make the joke. It's just that one person. When the reality is all nine of them are accountable for that one person's action because they didn't shut it down and they didn't change the cultural environment there.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a major problem.
For someone like myself, for example, like if I'm in a jiu-jitsu gym where I could definitely be in a situation where it's like seeing that sort of thing happening, what is like the actions that someone like myself can take? Because also if I see someone getting victimized, but if they don't want to speak up, like what are some like things that I could do? Because if they don't want to speak up, I feel like it's not an appropriate thing for me to then try and speak for them.
That's always a tough thing because if there is a survivor, or we were talking about this before about the semantics around this, but if there is a survivor that doesn't necessarily want to say anything and doesn't want to speak up, there's no environment that is. I'm in two minds about, like, is it the right thing to speak up for them, or do we respect their ability to want to stay silent? Um, and that is a tricky situation because what we don't want is to create an environment where they've done this to somebody and then they think it's okay to do it to someone else.
Yeah,
How I would always approach the situation is check in with the person, check in with the survivor, and ask them, um, are they okay? Is there anything that can be done? Is there any assistance? Is there any support that they need? You could always direct them to different organizations that do help people in these situations, like Safe Sport. um, so many people don't know about Safe Sport. Safe Sport is an organization built to protect athletes, whether that be kids, juveniles, adults. It's built to help athletes and help people within sports understand what they can do to keep themselves safe, what they can do legally, and what they can do in the direct, like in the near future to actually fix the problem. So you can direct them to things like that. But then on top of that, it becomes a, if this person has done it, hold them accountable for anything that they're doing. Don't put them in a situation where they can be alone with anybody that they can cause harm to. It would be like a very much monitor the situation, and anybody you think is in a vulnerable situation, in a vulnerable position in that environment, have conversations with them, give them advice on how they may want to remove themselves from that environment and how they may want to put themselves somewhere else. So
yeah,
it's not necessarily, we're not outing any of the victims, any of the survivors. We're not necessarily forcing them to go public, but we're just saying like, hey, there's something not quite right here. I'm just letting you know because I don't want anything negative to happen to you. So those are
yeah.
conversations that can also be had.
So on the other side of it then actually, because I just sort of a way to sort of word what I was thinking to ask is what does accountability look like for a perpetrator?
It looks like somebody that has taken advantage of, or committed anything that is inappropriate or just flat out sexual assault. these people should not be able to own gyms. They should not, they have no space in the jiu-jitsu environment. They have no, they should have no power over a group of people. They should be held accountable, whether that be in the legal system and actually going to jail for these things, or whether that be the community themselves need to excommunicate these people and disallow them to actually own gyms and own environments where they can have power over people. What happens quite often is they'll do something in one environment, they'll leave, they'll go to a different country, they'll open up a gym, they'll create a new environment, they'll do the same thing there. Jiu-jitsu is worldwide, right? So we all need to work together to not allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And that I think is very important. And that's how we prevent these people from just continuously coming back into the environment and creating the same problems.
Before we finish up, did you have any final thoughts you wanted to share on that, or just anything that you wanted to say to the jiu-jitsu community or to survivors or just anyone just on this matter?
100%. I like there's so much I want to say and there's I want to do my best to protect this environment. I love jujitsu. I do jujitsu because I love jujitsu. I see potential in jujitsu. I understand the good that it has in it. I understand how beneficial it can be towards people. I just, on the flip side of this, also see a very dark side of jujitsu that needs attention. It needs help. It needs us as a community to work together. I think the biggest thing right now is not letting this die with the news cycle. What happens so often on these problems is it lasts a news cycle, it goes away, and these people that are doing these things are not held accountable because people lose interest and people forget that it's even happening. And I think that is the idea that people care about it one week and don't care about it the next week confuses me. I don't understand
Yeah.
how people can be so passionate about something one week and then forget that it even exists the next. So um, we need to continue this fight. We need to continuously be aware about the environments that we're creating. We need to look in the mirror and see what we ourselves can personally be doing. Was that joke inappropriate? Um, did I create an uncomfortable environment for anybody? Am I actually talking to my training partners about how they feel? All those things are really important because that's what creates a safe environment where everybody is equally heard, equally understood, and equally respected. It doesn't matter the belt, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the sport. Everybody has the right to exist in the space.
Is there just any final shout outs you want to give either, just to people in the sport? You've got BJJ Fanatics instructionals as well. You've got a submeta course coming out soon as well. So if there's just anything like that you wanted to shout out.
Oh, definitely all the BJJ Fanatics material and I have a lot of courses that are going to be pumped out on Submeta. We're going to try and pump them out at least once a month, if not twice a month. And you'll get some behind the scenes on that as well of what I'm doing through my training camp. Obviously Hyperfly that have been nothing but supportive, especially with what's going on at the moment. They've tried to find ways that they can help personally, but they're just incredible. A massive thank you to my team, Jake, my manager, Sarah Rafferty, and my beautiful fiance who keeps my life together, honestly. The list is honestly endless, man. I work with a lot of incredible people. I work with the guys at Ray's who do my strength and conditioning, the fight dietitian who do my nutrition. When I say I outsource everything that I don't like doing, I literally outsource everything I don't like doing. And I have an incredible team of people around me. Match Fit 360 who do a really good job connecting me with different sponsorship opportunities as well as just raise awareness for women in sports in general. Other than that, I think that the main note that I want to leave it on is like I love jujitsu. We can improve the environment of jujitsu if we all work together. So let's get up off our asses and actually make a sizable cultural difference in this sport.
Thank you very much, Adele.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
You're the best legend. Thank you.